Yeah, this is to do with Sir Simon Clarke, who was Mr. Sunak's number 2 at the Treasury, and basically he's saying, you know, Conservative Party, you better think seriously about ditching Rishi Sunak, or else you're in big trouble come any election. What do you think?
So I couldn't agree with him more. Simon Clarke, I know there's a lot of rhetoric flying around this morning, but Simon Clarke is one of the most decent and principled men in politics today. And he is somebody who would always put party before self. Now, I've heard that there are people saying, oh, he has leadership ambitions. Simon Clarke couldn't be further from somebody who has leadership ambitions. So I just want to put that out there and put that straight. Simon Clarke has always fought a very difficult red wall seat. He's always been aware that his first priority was making sure he held that seat for the Conservative Party. And I think he will struggle to find anybody in the party who would not say what a principled man he is. So just that side. The other point I'd like to make is that the people who are criticising him this morning, they're not criticising Rishi Sunak. They're not backing Rishi Sunak, by the way. They feel exactly the same. But each one of them, and the 3 main people, Priti Patel, David Davis and Liam Fox, one of those 3 people have told me themselves that their preferred option is that the party does lose at the next election, because that sometimes has to happen. And each one of them believe that they should be the person who will be the saviour, who resurrects the party and leads the party moving on. Now, I like all 3 of those people, and they are all good people, but all of them do have very strong and always have had leadership ambitions. In fact, all 3 of them have at some stage in their political career run for leadership of the party. Simon Clarke hasn't, he never would, and people need to listen to what he says.
Okay.
And the point, actually, he's correct.
Okay.
If we continue as we are now, we are polling 20% of the vote. I think there was one poll last night that showed we would return fewer MPs than the Liberal Democrats. I think we're probably looking at a Canadian-style wipeout under Stephen Harper, I think it was, when the Conservative Party returned 3 MPs. That's what we're looking at if we don't do something now. And the Conservative Party wrote its suicide note the day it removed Boris Johnson. And I'm afraid this is the longest death in political history. That is what's taking place right now.
Yeah, but Nadine, people will be saying you've got to get over it. You know, we can't have another Prime Minister for 5 minutes before a general election. All that will happen is you'll get another one in, another unelected Prime Minister. It will totally infuriate huge swathes of the British public, and you'll be handing the keys to Sir Keir Starmer. Loads of Tories getting in touch this morning saying exactly that. Jeremy in Stafford, if the Tories dispose of Rishi Sunak now, the pressure to hold an immediate general election would make it inevitable. Who on earth would want to be Prime Minister for 5 minutes? And Pixie says, is the Conservative Party mad? That's why they're in the state they are. They got rid of Boris against the voters' will. Why do they think a new PM would then suddenly win an election?
I couldn't agree with all of them more. It's just replacing the leader is not going to... So there are a number of points in Simon's letter and Simon's article actually in the Telegraph yesterday. And so the first one I addressed with you this morning was, is he right in saying that we are walking into an absolute massacre? Yes, we are. The second point, should we change leader at this point? What has the party got? So the party is looking at total wipeout. And I believe that polling is coming out soon, which shows the situation to be even worse than it was last Sunday night when polling came out.
How do you know about that? I'm just interested how you know about the polling that's about to come out. And I ask you that because there are lots of questions about who was behind the polling last week. Was it Lord Frost or indeed Sir Simon Clarke? So do you have some intel on all of this?
So I've heard the same as you. I've also heard Michael Ashcroft's name. I've heard, I'm not Simon, I've heard Lord Frost, Simon Ashcroft, Lord Crudders. I don't know. I wish I did. I really wish I did. I don't know. So I am so sorry, but I don't know. But I do hear things like you do.
Okay.
So
what you do know that Sir Keir Starmer is beatable. He is a weak link for the Labour Party. So which only goes to sort of highlight how bad Rishi Sunak must be in the eyes of the public. I mean, it's not as if... I mean, I think I would fancy taking on Keir Starmer, to be quite truthful.
So there is no love for Keir Starmer, I can promise you, out on the doorstep. But what you're seeing happening at the moment with the hugely volatile situation politics is in, is that, and I've talked about this, I'm going to mention it in my book, The Plot, which I wrote just before Christmas, is that the people, when the public come out and vote for somebody in the numbers that they voted for Boris Johnson, when people who have only ever voted Labour their entire lives change and vote Conservative, that's a big deal. That takes a lot for someone to do, a lifelong Labour supporter or Conservative supporter, the other way around, to vote for the other party. And the fact is they didn't. We got an 80-seat majority. We've got a bigger percentage of the vote share in 2019 than Tony Blair did in 97, because people came out and voted for Boris Johnson.
Well, a lot of people came out and voted against Jeremy Corbyn as well, people would say to that. And so Simon Clarke saying this morning, we need a leader championing core Conservative values. Well, we're hearing there's going to be tax cuts coming up in the March the 6th budget, lots of extra headroom there. We've had the toughest immigration bill ever under the Conservatives trying to sort out this problem of illegal crossings. What more do you want from the Prime Minister? Much more core Conservative can you get?
Our levels of taxation are the highest in 40 years.
Yeah, we also have an army that can't defend us if we go into World War III because of the not enough funding going into that. How much more, do you want us to spend?
So, without going into a kind of lesson on the basics of economics, the less people are taxed, the more people have money they have in their pockets, the more they will spend, the more goes back to the Treasury and revenue, the more we have to spend on issues like defence. That is the problem at the moment. It's not, I served in Cabinet the entire time Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. I watched him block the Rwanda policy for 3 whole years, block it at every turn, until the day he became Prime Minister. I watched him cancel social care. I watched him argue for higher taxes over and over again. I watched those cabinet ministers who at the cabinet table made the case for lower taxation, increased revenues to the Treasury via lower taxation, and giving people more money in their pockets, lose their jobs as soon as Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. I'm afraid politics is not always an honourable game. And, if you were to ask me honestly, what do I think my opinion is of Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister? I don't think he's a politician. I don't think he gets it. I don't think he understands what motivates people. And I don't think he understands the basic principles of what it is that makes people go out and vote for a particular party and what it is they want for themselves. And what they want for themselves is more responsibility to decide themselves how they spend their money. They want the taxman to be diving into their pockets less. They want to do up their homes. They want to go on holidays. They want to do their gardens. All of that involves spending, and all of that involves money that comes back to the Treasury. Okay. And I'm afraid we're one of the highest tax nations in, I'm not going to quote a figure because I'll probably be wrong, but we're paying higher taxes now than we have for 2 generations.
Yeah. Nadine, I've got 2 political gurus around this table in the form of Nigel Nelson and Claire Purcell. Guys, I'm just looking at you and looking at Nadine, and is there anything pops to mind or anything you want to particularly ask or say to or challenge her on?
Well, the only question there is that whether Nadine feels that you actually could bring Boris back. It seems to be her idea. I mean, the only way it can happen is after the election, but he'd need a seat or whatever. I think not. In the same way, the idea that you might get rid of another Prime Minister, especially just before the election, I mean, that's for the birds. It would just be
for the birds. It's for the birds. Boris back, Nadine?
I'm not sure he wants to come back. Just let me tell you a little bit of news. I've heard that Henley and Tame, Boris's local seat where he was previously the MP, they've just conducted their selection of their candidate, and they did it in 6 days, just in case Boris Johnson wanted to go back to that seat. And because people in that constituency wanted Boris, they turned it around in 6 days. And so, that was my intelligence on Monday. Whether it happened last night or not, I'm not sure. But I'm not even sure Boris, the party is almost unleadable. And the point that I was making earlier, he got a bigger vote share of the percentage of the vote share than Tony Blair did in 97. And to your point that people were voting against Jeremy Corbyn, that's not what I hear, and that's not what I'm hearing from MP after MP who's out on the doorstep, who tell me that people are saying to them, I voted for Boris. They're not saying I voted against Jeremy Corbyn. They're saying I voted for Boris Johnson. And I'm afraid when you take people's votes and you trash them, when MPs decide that they know better than the general public, you're going to suffer, and that is what's happening to us now.
Claire?
Yeah, it's just a really quick question. If we are going to dispatch yet another Prime Minister and install another one very quickly, I would ask if, Nadine, would you support not going to the membership of the Conservative Party and just having almost a coronation? Is that something you would support?
That's a really good point, Claire. And actually, I would never, ever support not going to the membership, because I think what's happened with Boris Johnson was totally undemocratic. I think we have a democratic deficit in the party at the moment and at the heart of government. But I think what will happen is this. Just as when Ian Duncan Smith was removed, MPs were persuaded that it would be wrong to go through a leadership election. It was 2003. They had no idea when an election would be coming. They were persuaded not to have a leadership election. And I think we were all blindsided by David Cameron arriving as Foreign Secretary. Nothing happens by accident, either at the top of the Conservative Party or in government. Nothing happens by accident. There was a reason why David Cameron was brought back at the point he was. There's a reason why you have very prime ministerial footage, why you are broadcasting it and other channels are broadcasting it today. And I would not be surprised at all if what you see is some kind of arrangement made in the near future where it's possible for David Cameron to go into the Commons from the Lords, possibly to the bar. And I think you will find that an elegant solution, if Rishi is removed by a vote of no confidence, will be for MPs to be persuaded to put David Cameron in place for an election, because he's fought them before and nearly won one and did win one, that he's been there before, he's an old hand, he knows what he's doing. Let David Cameron take over until an election, and then the party can put its leader in place, exactly as it happened with Ian Duncan Smith and Michael Howard.
Interesting. Nadine, we could talk for a lot longer, but the clock has beaten us. Thank you for your time and contributions this morning. That gives us more to talk about in the studio. Nadine Dorries.